I used to work at St. Margaret's Hospital in Dorchester. And he was going to Tufts Medical School. He was in his third year. And a lot of times the medical students would come up to different hospitals and they'd work in the blood bank, and in turn they would get room and board. So he and another fellow would take turns. They were both third-year medical students. They would work after school hours every other night and every other weekend. And I was the shift nurse on 3 to 11 in the obstetrics. And so we got very friendly then. We're just friends for about a year and a half. And then we started to go out. The reason they worked there was because he wouldn't have to get an apartment, and he couldn't live at home because he lived out of state. And this was one way of earning room and board, and he didn't have to pay for it. It was the same as when he went to Holy Cross. He was a very good athlete at LaSalle in Rhode Island. And then his brother wanted him to try out for football, and he thought that he could get a scholarship.
They told him when he went to there, there's no way you can play football and do a pre-med. And his senior year, he was, they started a new trophy called Crusader of the Year Award. And in order to win the Crusader of the Year, you had to excel in athletics, but the main point of it was you excelled in the classroom. So he was the first recipient to get the Crusader of the Year Award. It showed that he took on one of the hardest courses you could take in school and graduated, what do you have, like a 3.9 average?
And he said, I can do it, and I'll show you. So he did it for 1 year, and he made high honors each quarter, and they finally, his second year, they said, okay, we're going to give you a scholarship. And this is the way his work ethics were. He did this throughout his whole life. It was, if he wanted something, he could do it. He never had much material things in life, but he had a lot of support and help with family, friends, and that was all he needed. With his faith in God and his ability to do what he could do, he did it to the best of his ability, and he did a good job.
He didn't make friends with people or, choose to, be with people because they were important, or, he was a pretty, he's a doctor, founded a practice here in town, so he was a pretty influential figure in the community, but, so he was friends with anyone, and everybody. Like you said, it didn't matter to him if, like Russell was walking around with his shoes duct taped, he didn't care. It was just, this is a person that's, friendly with us, and, I'm friendly with him. He's a good person, so that's what's important.
He worked hard. I don't know how the guy ever did it, but he would, he worked 24/7. I remember for 8 to 10 years, he worked every single Christmas. We'd come in there, we'd come down and want to open our presents, and we said, no, just do your stockings, wait till your father gets home. And it was, a long time. Every day, every year, the same thing. But it was, you after about 4 or 5 years, you go, okay, come down, you open your stock, go get something to eat, and hang out.
Throughout my life, he was teaching us that you're not going to get things you like to do all the time. Sometimes you're going to have to do something you don't like to do, but you still need to do a good job at it. You're still going to have to give it your all, and you may not get awards or accolades or recognition, but you can still be proud of yourself because you did a good job. And I feel like I try to do that still. It's little things, but you still want to do your best at them.
Dad was always so, he really lived the example about, if you work hard, you'll do well. You're not gonna be maybe top of the class, or you won't be like top in your sport, but you'll do well, you'll perform well, and you'll at least be satisfied with what you did.
I flunked off the basketball team with grades midterm, and he wouldn't talk to me for like a month and a half.
Really?
Literally, I'd walk in a room, he'd walk out. And that's because he stressed so much that, hey, he didn't care about how well you played. He was upset because I couldn't get the grades. He knew it wasn't because I was stupid. He knew it because I did it because I was lazy. And that's what it came down to.
Always wanted us to work hard and do our best, and he never, I used to play basketball, and I'd foul out of games, and I'd cry, and he'd say, "That's what they give you 5 fouls for. Like, don't worry about it." And he really helped shape us into who we all are.
We went into the service, and we lived in Germany for 3 years. And took full advantage of all the travels that we could get. We did a lot of camping. We camped on our honeymoon, as a matter of fact, up in Canada. That was, and we did a lot of camping over in Germany. We did a lot of camping here before. It's a good way to meet people, and it's economical, and it was really, you could take the whole family with you. And he just loved being with the family all the time. That was, we thoroughly enjoyed being with the kids, going out, doing things with them, watching their games, everything that, families would do together.
And it was important to him to spend time with his brother and all of his brothers and sisters. I mean, think of, most of our, holidays, everything. Everybody was always together, and he loved that. He would sit right in the middle of everything and just sit there.
He could actually make time and go to their games, and the best thing he did was when Ian was playing softball and stuff, he was actually, scorekeeper. He went to Virginia with him, and he was the scorekeeper. He loved every minute of it.
I think back about my races and things, and I see that I've always felt like he was at more of the games than he wasn't. I mean, I know he didn't go to every single game, but it wasn't like he only made it to a few. And I mean, I'm one of 11, and when I was in high school, there were 4 or 5 other kids in school involved in sports, and it was the same for all of them.
He worked a lot. He was a doctor,
Yeah.
worked all hours, but I felt like he was still always there. I mean, we would get off the school bus and come home, and he'd be home. He'd be here at the house, and he was at dinners most of the nights, and he didn't sit down to dinner, but we always, were together at dinner.
But we were just over in the corner over at the Roy's, and people are drinking, and I forget who came up to him, and he's like, "Hey, Doc, we're just talking about life's biggest accomplishments, And he said, you've seen it all, you've done it all, how old are you?" And, Pop was like 76, whatever. He's like, "What's your biggest accomplishment?" And he just didn't have to think about it, and he looked around, and I happened to be standing there, although I was his favorite. He puts his arm around me, and, he says, "Right here," and Timmy was over there, and, Kath was over there, "Right here, these kids are my biggest accomplishments." Like, someone who's done so much in football and medical and delivered all these babies, but it all came back to us, to his family. And
He was a storyteller, and I feel like we feel really close to so extended family because of all the stories he told. He was constantly, kind of knitting the ties from aunts and uncles and grandparents and even great-grandparents, people we didn't know, but through his stories. And it also, kind of made us realize how important his family was to him.
he did things in a roundabout way. So like one thing I was thinking about is on the way to band practice, going up to Sacred Heart. It was a 25, 30-minute ride. And it was only me and him in the car, which is very rare. And he probably didn't want me asking him questions, this and that, and he would turn on the classical music. And instead of saying, oh, listen to this, you'll like this, he made a game out of it. He'd say, let's listen for, when you hear the clarinet, tell me when you hear the clarinet. So it was just a different way for me to appreciate music, if he had told me, I want you to listen to this, I would have been like, oh, this is so stupid, this is so stupid, I wish this, but it made the trip up there more special, and it made me appreciate the music in just a different kind of way. You know, the way he went about things wasn't your average.
He was part of the Knights of Columbus, which is a group that's affiliated with the church. And every year, the Knights of Columbus, because we were St. Patrick's Church, they would put on an Irish night. And, you know, most of the people that helped put on the Irish night, it was the men that did it. But not my father. He had all of us help, and like we helped serve. And the night before, we were helping peeling the potatoes and peeling the carrots. And I mean, it wasn't a family event, but he made the whole family involved. And then not only that, like the night of the dinner, we helped serve the dinner, we helped clean up afterwards, we were part of the entertainment, like people just got up and sang, like that's what they did at this Irish night. And I mean, that's the kind of family, that's how he showed us that family was what was important.
When he asked me to marry him, he was penniless, but they were doing some experiments on, I don't know exactly what it was, but he would have to save all his urine, and I think about every third day he'd have to take it in, and they would take blood from him. He'd have to fast so that they could take the blood, and they did, I don't know what kind of experiments they did, but they did this, and he got paid for that, and that's how he bought my ring, with the money that he got for saving his urine and his blood. He left a note there and he says, look under your pillow. And I went under my pillow and there it was, the diamond ring, bought with his urine and his blood. And that's how he asked me to marry him.
Really?
So naturally I said yes, you know.
That's
He
awesome.
was a good catch.
It never matched. He would wear whatever he could find. He'd have two different types of gloves on. He'd have, you know, he'd have like an old coat. He would just basically wear whatever he could get. And, you know, Mim will give you a good one about the dress he wore. But,
Ooh, he goes, you know, Marie, he goes, this is the best sweater you've ever made me. You know, and she's like, well, what sweater do you have on? He goes, you know, the white one. He goes, you know, it's a little bit, you know, it's short in the sleeves, and he goes, it's a little bit long. He goes, but it really kept me warm. And she was like, I don't know, what sweater are you talking about? Can you, you know, show me? And he peels off his jacket, then peels off his sweatshirt, and then he peeled off his, like, windbreaker, and then by the time he got down to the actual sweater that he had on, she's like, I don't know, you know, it looks like a fisherman's knit sweater, except it had 3/4 length sleeves on Dad, which was really, you know, it looked kind of funny. And then he's like taking the sweater and he just kept rolling it down until it got to be about, you know, mid-thigh length. And we were like, that is the craziest sweater ever. We're all thinking and kind of laughing. And my mom's just like, oh, Bob, that's my new Irish knit dress, and you wore it to the game. So she was so mad. But that just epitomized, you know, Papa.
He came home and the doctor's appointment, and him and Mimi are hush hush, and I'm like, what's going on? No, nothing. Everything is hush hush with them. I'm like, what are you talking about? What's going on? And my father's like, well, I have to have surgery. I'm like, surgery? Well, what are you having surgery done? He's like, on my eyes, you know. Surgery on your eyes. He's like, yeah, well, my eyelids come over, and they kind of come over my eyes. I said, are you getting a facelift, Dad? Are you having nip and tuck? And he starts smiling. Oh, no, I knew people were gonna make fun of me for that. So he had his plastic surgery, his facelift, but he was embarrassed to even tell people he was getting that done.
No, I don't think I did. But I think some of his brothers and sisters thought that he should, you know, be a little bit more doctor-like, you know.
The way he was.
That's the way he was. And that story we were talking about, because he never matched. Nothing ever matched. He never cared about things. He cared about people, and he cared about things that were true. He did not care about what he wore or what he put on his back.
It must have been
Ever.
a conscious decision on his
just
part
did it.
at some point in time. You know.
Yeah, and the one time was when they all came back from Germany. We all came back from Germany and came up here to visit. And everyone was delighted. And my mother took one look at the whole crew, and she sent us into Wakefield to get clothes at Fleming's for the kids because
But she engaged
was-
us by saying, she said, I don't want to offend Marie. Or, you know, so I wanted to look like you as the aunt. Just took the kids off to Wakefield and bought them some clothes. You know what I mean?
She said, it's
She
one
was
thing if
helping
he
me.
wants to look like that, but she's for God's sakes, he's a doctor. She says, I don't want these kids, my neighbors, seeing these children running around in these
Yeah,
clothes.
barefoot, you know.
We had to
what's
go.
on.
When we came back from Germany, they lost our luggage that we had shipped home and had in storage. And so we had nothing. And of course, we didn't have any money. So we couldn't buy any new clothes or anything else. And so he started in this new practice with his partners coming up. And wore the same clothes to work 3 days in a row. His partner said to him, you know, we kind of dress up around here. And he says, oh, okay, you know, so he went out and he got himself a new suit. I think he probably went to the Salvation Army, I'm not sure. But anyway, he didn't wear the same thing the next day. And a couple of days later, he took the kids fishing while I was in the hospital having a number 6 baby. And his daughter threw his two front teeth down the toilet. So he comes in and he says, what am I going to do? He says, first of all, I don't have any clothes and now I don't have any teeth. He made out. He had a lot of faith in himself and he had a lot of faith in God. And no matter what happened, we had each other, we had the family, and we had our health, you know. What more can you ask for?